Hi, I'm Jackie Tantillo, and this is Should Have Listened to My Mother. It's so nice to be back with another conversation. In a minute, I will introduce my guest, but I'd like to thank you for your loyalty, feedback, and reviews on Apple Podcast. And you can email the show directly at SHLTMM podcast@gmail.com. It's always great to hear from you, and you can find us wherever you listen, including YouTube. My guest is Stephanie Banks. When her mother's dementia made verbal communication impossible, Stephanie found ways to communicate with her mother's soul. By channeling her mother's soul, it allowed both women to maintain a deep, meaningful connection while her mother was still alive, which is fantastic. This was the beginning of my guest's journey as an intuitive channel. Connection and communication have played a role throughout my guest's career, including as a speech pathologist, birth doula, lactation consultant, infant massage instructor, and as an intuitive channel. Stephanie explains her channeling as an ability to reconnect people to their soul's wisdom and innate intuition to create a life of their wildest imagining. She believes that by acknowledging the right side of the brain, which is our intuitive side of the brain, anyone and everyone can begin to learn to do channel. Here to share stories of her mother, Joanie, Stephanie, welcome to Should Have Listened to My Mother.
Thank you so much, Jackie. I'm really happy to be here with you and intrigued to see where we meander today.
Yes, we never know. We could go to different realms. With your skills and talents, I would imagine that many things are possible.
That's true.
Oh, my goodness. You are not alone, and I don't mean to diminish your experience with your mom. I so admire how you turned the circumstances around. So many of us have experienced our parent or grandparent or loved one when we are unable to communicate with them because of dementia or other illnesses. But because you have this holistic background, you decided, because you hadn't channeled before this, right?
Correct.
You decided that you were going to take a deep dive into this experience. Before we go into that deep dive, though, I want to hear a little bit more about Joanie. And because in the photos, you two are like two peas in a pod. You look very similar, vivacious, beautiful, bright smiles. So I'd like to find out a little bit more about what Joanie's experience was from a little girl maybe till her adult years, and so we can get her essence.
Oh, absolutely. She is totally thrilled with this conversation.
Hi, Joanie. I'm saying hi to you because you're probably here.
I told her a few minutes ago, "Oh, Mom, you're really going to like this one. I'm going to do a podcast all about you." My mother was a very precious person and soul who loved attention. She loved bright colors. She grew up with a father who owned a women's clothing store. And so he would give her all sorts of beautiful things to try and wear and show off, his beautiful clothing. And he really doted on her. So she benefited from a very close relationship with her father.
Mm-hmm.
I think her relationship with her own mother was a little bit more challenging and complicated. But I experienced her as a playful, joyful, fun-loving, celebratory energy for my childhood and growing up. And I also experienced her as someone who struggled with mental illness, depression, anxiety, and perhaps some other things. And that, played into the complexity of our connection and our relationship. Mm-hmm. So my mother was a whole lot of things, and I learned so much from her, and I really love that we were able to find a way on a soul level to stay connected even once her dementia had progressed to a point where verbal and traditional communication was not possible for us. So I love what I do as an intuitive channel because I like to show people how to maintain their soul connection to their loved one while they're in their body, even if there are things that are in the way. It could be a cognitive dysfunction, a brain injury, anything that disrupts natural flow of communication as we know it, because we can do that. We can maintain that connection. And it really allowed me to understand on a very deep level what my mom and I were here to do together as souls having a human experience, instead of just the frustration of missing what we were trying to say or understand from each other. We went beyond that, and we were able to stay connected through the remainder of her lived lifetime. And still right now, she sends me a bright red cardinal to my window of my home since she passed. It's been 11 years. This same bird comes to my window and harasses my son when he's sleeping.
She wants
And
to
all
play with
for
them, perhaps, or spend
yeah.
time, wake them up.
Yes, it was her favorite bird. She loved animals. She loved birds, nature. I've just gleaned so much beauty from my mom's existence.
It would be great if in every case the dementia would basically wipe out the mental illness, bring calmness, even though they didn't remember who you were or recognize another loved one. It would be wonderful if it worked that way in every case, but often they give us signs that they're still unhappy.
Yeah, you can kind of see by the person's outward behaviors and demeanor what their internal experience is. And unfortunately, my mother did not have a peaceful experience with her dementia. Her dementia began when she was in her 50s. And so, and it progressed for over 15 years. So it was something that was very challenging. It changed her behaviors. It changed her personality. It made her very impulsive in some dangerous ways, like jumping out of cars while they're moving and things of that nature.
Oh,
She
boy.
would get agitated. So hers was not a peaceful experience. There are some people whose experience of dementia is much more inward and much more calm, and they are allowed this kind of like a spaciousness almost to be in other zones or realms or experiences that do not bring the kind of difficulty that my mother's did. So that was her
That
experience.
was
So
her
we were
journey.
constantly, yeah, trying to manage, that the mood changes and the personality changes and the behaviors in that way.
So let's go back a little bit. Do you have siblings?
I do. I have an older sister.
Your childhood, your teenage years, were they tough? Was your mom's mental illness already evident then?
Oh, yeah, they were tough. And probably the toughest during that phase. My mom, when I was much younger, she went through an inpatient hospitalization for her mental illness. And then again, she had another hospitalization when I was maybe I think I might have been in third grade or so. So it had been an ongoing challenge and difficulty for her. It would kind of come in these intense waves. And then we would get my father always made sure she had the best doctors and the best specialists, and he would fly her anywhere in the country that she could get that level of care. But oftentimes they would miss some things or misdiagnose some things. In fact, when her dementia came on board, they kept saying for years that it was depression, and they were simply treating depression. And they didn't understand until at least several years into it that it was actually frontotemporal dementia. Now they know more about that type of dementia, but they didn't then. So they were treating something that was actually not what she needed treatment for. But the difficulty in my teenage years was significant because, of course, that's where I'm trying to individuate and establish, my own preferences and desires that are separate from my parents. She had a very hard time with that. I think she was very fearful of the separation that was inevitable between her and her kids. You know, the fact that we would go to
Leaving.
college and move
Right.
away. Yes, exactly. So she carried a heaviness around that, and you could feel that sort of in a grasping sort of way. It was difficult and challenging, but I always knew my role was to keep my mom content. So I knew how to make her laugh and how to activate that silly part of her. And we would be goofy. We would dance around together. She really enjoyed and was easy to distract to different things. She loved chocolate. That's where I get my chocolate thing from.
Mm.
So I found ways for us to have, connection and enjoyment in our relationship, but it also was challenging.
But there's a price for that for you. I mean, that's
Yes.
a big role for a teenager or a child to take on, is to always make sure that, oh, I don't stumble here. I don't do something that might trigger a reaction. I've got to make her happy. That's exhausting.
Absolutely. It's exhausting. And that's my part of my journey as an adult with who does not have living parents any longer, is for me to do my healing and to explore that and peel away the layers that are involved there. And that's been an ongoing journey for a long time. And I'm a big fan of therapy. There's so many modalities now that are so useful in understanding ourselves so that we can interrupt patterns and choose a different way. I parent very, very differently than my mother, and I am really happy with the way that I parent and the level of communication and the depth of connection that I have with my children. So I learned a lot just through the contrast of what I lived with her.
Right. So the question of, are you who you are today because of or in spite of your mom?
Both, because of and in spite of.
It's amazing, isn't it? I mean, I don't know how long ago I came up with that question, but it's like my elevator pitch, but it applies to everybody, and especially in this conversation. If you could go back and do it again, would you take the same role? Would you be the distractor, the entertainer, the maker happy?
Yeah, because that is something that serves me so well in other arenas of my life when it is balanced.
That's a gift that you have, that ability to do that for people, not only your mom.
Exactly. And she also, I credit that strife with my mother with my really, really sharp ability to read energy. I can walk into a room and pick up on things that nobody else is present to. I can listen to the tone of somebody's voice and not see their face and know what's going on internally for them. I can connect with animals on a level that allows me to understand a bit more about their plight and their needs. It has helped me develop the skills that I have now as an intuitive channel and use this professionally to benefit the clients that I serve around the world. So I'm incredibly grateful. I don't know that I would have ever touched in on this particular field if I didn't have a need to have my mom channeled by my best friend at the time and connect. I didn't even know that channeling was a thing. I didn't even know that souls could communicate with us real time. So it opened up worlds to me, and I would not do it differently at all.
Was there mental illness in your mom's family?
Hmm. I don't, I can't speak to that so perfectly. Not in her father. I don't believe in her mother. Um, yeah, I don't really know. I haven't been digging a lot around that. I think really my mom was, um, her father passed unexpectedly of a heart attack when she was pregnant with me. And that was so devastating and jarring to her. And she used to say in her own way that she never recovered from it. And I don't know what that played in her mental illness, but I know that was a devastation and a shock to her nervous system that she really didn't recover from.
mourning the loss of her father and the hormonal imbalance, the postpartum. That's a tough combination right there for any woman. So was she happy as a young adult and before she was married?
I believe for the most part, yes. Her marriage to my father was her second marriage, but her first one really lasted a very short period of time, and she realized she wanted to have children and a family, and he didn't. So it didn't sound like that was a very significant part of her journey in that it had lasting negative effects. I didn't see anything of that. What I'm amazed and grateful for is that my parents found each other, because my father was exactly what she needed, always. And I have friends that call my dad a saint, and they're right. That's true. He just never ever wavered in his devotion to her, commitment to her, and with the journey that she took with her mental illness, it was not easy. Like, that was very, very hard, especially the dementia, because she would have there were some physical lashing out that she would do, and he just handled it and managed it with the greatest kindness and compassion and softness, and generosity and love that you would ever hope for.
Wow, so they were meant to be together.
Yeah.
Could you share the story about when you inquired about hospice and the doctors thought that that was a little bit premature or a lot premature?
Yes. Yes. I was starting to get like nudges. I call them nudges from the universe, that hospice would be an appropriate thing for us to explore for my mom. But she was otherwise bodily very healthy. She was strong. She would wrestle the nurse that tried to draw blood from her to the ground.
Oh my gosh.
she was she was walking, and but so I was confused when I was getting these nudges to explore it. And I asked her doctor if he would please write a referral for us to at least explore hospice services, and he was hesitant because he had just seen her in the office earlier, and even though she was not looking, well, she was still very much alive. And we picture hospice patients as those who are on their deathbed. But the truth is that hospice services are for a wide variety of people in different stages.
Absolutely. Jimmy Carter, for example.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So he agreed, because I suppose I was convincing, and also it's not a commitment to use hospice. It's just, let's see if they think she's a good candidate, then we have to explore that. Mm-hmm. So they sent a hospice nurse. She did the evaluation, and she saw how agitated and uncomfortable my mom was. So she recommended it was about over a week that we went into a hospice facility. But my father did not want my mom to remain there for her passing. So we got her medically stable in terms of being calm. She had gotten to the point where she was pacing around the house all day, all night. She would not sit down for a second, not for a meal, not for anything. She was losing weight. She was losing her balance and falling. It was very, very frightening. And she had like this internal motor that wouldn't stop. So the time when we brought her home from hospice, she went very quickly into what we would normally consider a typical hospice patient, where she was then bed bound. She did not get up and move around anymore, and we tended to her, all of her needs at the bedside. And something very interesting that happened is there were several moments where my mother was on the verge of passing. And each time this happened, the hospice nurse would call us and say, come home or come over. She's close, because there are breathing changes and signs that, it's imminent. As soon as I would arrive to the room where my mother was, she would restabilize. This happened not once, not twice, but 3 times.
Wow, and that gives me the chills. Oh,
yeah. And at first I thought, wow, that's amazing. And then the second time I thought, okay, this is getting tiring. And the third time I thought, no,
I'm not
Just
going.
no, because I didn't want her to extend this, dying process. And I did not know what energy I could possibly be bringing that would be like reviving her, but it was. In fact, our last hospice nurse witnessed this happen, and she pulled me into the bathroom away from my mom's bedroom, and she said, "I do not know what you're doing, but whatever you did when you came and stood by your mother," and because I had opened my arms just like in a way to bring a loving circle of energy around her and my
Yes.
father, she said, "I watched her breath return, and she is now calm and peaceful again." She said, "I'm going to write about you in my book."
Oh, that's
I've never
so
seen
great.
anything like this before. But so that's a long-winded way of saying by the time she did let go, I was enormously relieved. I had been praying for it, begging for it, willing it. I just wanted my mom to be free.
Yeah. That's pretty amazing. And yet she, like when you were younger, she was always so happy when you returned. You always brought her happiness when you were with her. So she could sense your energy and your love. So she immediately had a smile on her face and started to breathe again
Yeah.
in your
Yeah.
presence. What was her personality like as a young woman? Did she have girlfriends? Did she go out dancing? Was she an artist? Or what were her interests?
Yes. She had girlfriends. My mom did teach me how to nurture my female relationships, which I'm so grateful for. She was really devoted to her friends. They would have lengthy phone calls, and this was when landlines were the thing, and you had to stay in
By the
close
phone
physical proximity, right? So
and
she
curl
would
the
pace.
cord on your finger.
Yes, exactly. She'd pace back and forth and have hours of conversations. She was a big letter writer. She would keep in touch with her friends through letters, and she also sent wonderful letters and care packages to me as I was a camper at overnight camp and throughout my college and graduate school years. Yes, she did enjoy dancing. I don't know if she probably did go out with friends dancing. She was a flirt. She really enjoyed attention, and enjoyed people, loved babies. She had a very infectious laugh. She was a very joyful energy to be around, and people were definitely drawn into her.
This is a story of a woman who,
Of a woman who came into this lifetime to enjoy life, spread joy, and transcend some challenges.
yeah, she really was here to teach, wasn't she? To
Yeah.
teach you, and now you're teaching others of this experience. Well, I'm so glad to hear that she had a wonderful, fulfilled life before it kind of became more consuming for her, all consuming.
She definitely did. She had a really, really good life.
Thanks to your dad for being an angel and a saint.
Yes,
So people can find you on Facebook and Instagram at Stephanie Intuitive Channel. Is that correct?
that's right.
And your website is soulinsight.com.
Yes.
Okay. So tell us a little bit about, because I know you do podcasts and you do one-on-one sessions. How do people find you other than what I've given? What more information can we share with them?
That's pretty much it. You can learn a lot about my work all on the website at soulinsight.com, and that's where all of my recorded podcasts are and the videos that explain what I do, what I teach, how I channel for others.
And do you work domestically or do you work with clients internationally?
Yeah, most of my work is on Zoom, and my clients are all around the world.
It's fantastic. And are you learning or reaching higher levels of your intuitiveness? Is that the correct word? Are you exploring and finding new connections or ways to connect? I mean, it must keep expanding the breadth of information that you get.
Yeah, as long as I take really good care of myself, I call it bodacious self-care, then my channel is clear and high vibrational and open. I have learned how to get out of my own way so that spirit can bring in the love and the insights that will benefit us.
Is it draining? Is it a kind of take a toll on your body and your physicalness, all of this mental and spiritual and love that people are asking of you?
If my self-care is off, then yes, it will be draining to me. But when my self-care is robust, no, it's actually very fulfilling and activating for me.
Is that a philosophy? Because I think we get nervous or stressed in our work, and if we just let go, as my mother used to say, let go and let God, but if we let the stress go and let it, our intuitive mind or channels open, we would probably be more productive in our life and everyday activities.
Absolutely. Most of the things that I fret about are so much better handled by the universe and my energy team than me trying to effort my way through it with my left, linear thinking brain. So that's our journey, to remember that again and again through trial and error. And I feel like that's part of the lesson of this walk in life is we don't actually have control over the things we presume to have control over. And when we are willing to open up our palms and allow for the natural flow of things and just participate with love in what we can, then life gets a whole lot more easeful.
Right, and we can do that in a minute, even if we just stop and sit in our chair or go outside and breathe. Just take ourselves away from the spiral, the swirl, the network of mess that's going on in our brain. Just with a couple of deep breaths, or just to try and calm it all, it will change the day. At least change the minute, which is probably the most important thing.
That's right. And I think what you mentioned about nature is absolutely essential, because we are nature. We're not like, it's not that there's us and then there's nature. We are all of it. So I find my greatest replenishing and my greatest grounding and centering and receiving happens out in my garden, or happens out among the trees in a forest, or in the mountains, or by water. I grow a lot of different plants and fruits in my garden, and it's just watching life take place out there. All of that's happening while I'm inside these walls. It's magic. It's miracles constantly, and nature has a beautiful, perfect way of healing herself and us, and of maintaining harmony.
Stephanie Banks, I'm so glad we got to talk this week. It's been an absolute pleasure, and hopefully we will instill others to perhaps concentrate more on the right side of their brain and what signals they're getting.
Thank you, Jackie.
And we'll be back next week with another episode of Should Have Listened to My Mother.